Welcome back to another episode of 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me to talk about the Tennessee Volunteers versus the Ole Miss Rebels is our host, Mr. Logan Landers. How's it going, man?
What's going on, Jeremiah? We're here to talk about another great game in college football this upcoming weekend between Tennessee and Ole Miss. Both these teams are very good. It's going to be a great matchup. And man, what's better than some SEC football? I don't know what is, but it's going to be a good matchup, and I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, believe you me, like a great SEC matchup with two amazing teams, especially a team that I hold very dearly to my heart because I grew up around Knoxville. I went to high school in that area. I was there during the 98 season on through the early 2000s when we were very dominant. And, I've been waiting for quite a while to see us rise back to really be putting a stake in the ground. And under Josh Heupel, I really feel like we've done that even during a rebuilding year, which makes me extremely happy for the future for the Vols. Makes me feel like we can really close the season out well and just really be like, hey, the Vols are back. Ole Miss Rebels are nothing to play with, though, if we do not bring it to the house, if we do not play 4 strong quarters of football, and it's not going to be there for us. So that's another thing. This is going to be a very contentious game and a huge game in the SEC. So, Mr. Logan Landers, please break it down for us, all of our fandom, all the Tennessee Volunteers fans over in Knoxville, all the Ole Miss Rebels fans. What do they have to look forward to for this game?
Well, as always, like to go back to these two teams did in this last week, see how they're coming off, see if they got a good win, see if they barely got by. Tennessee, they got the win, but man, they got up by a good amount. They beat South Carolina last week, 45-20. Beat them single-handedly, went really well. The offense was clicking on all cylinders, scored 28 points in the first quarter. So they got off to a hot start and did not stop throughout the entire game. Hendon Hooker looked tremendous, 17 of 23 passing, 225 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Can't get much more efficient than that, Jeremiah. He looked absolutely great, and you got to hope that he can continue this trend going up against Ole Miss, who are currently, right now, the number 13th ranked team in the country. So they got some momentum on their side. They had a good win last week. Hooker looked amazing. Tion Evans led the way on the ground. 16 carries for 119 yards, 1 touchdown. And also Hooker, hey, he's not just a good throwing quarterback. He can run the ball pretty good as well. 20 carries for 66 yards and another touchdown. So he's responsible for 4 scores on the day. I mean, that's when you talk about your leader on offense and your quarterback in particular. He did everything you think of. He didn't have any turnovers. He had 4 touchdowns in total, and he threw for a good amount of yardage on good passing numbers too. That's what I call a very efficient game from Mr. Hendon Hooker. You got to think he has a lot of confidence now going up now this upcoming week against Ole Miss. You'll love to see it if you are a Vols fan. Now for the receiving core, they had themselves a day also. Velus Jones, 103 yards on 6 catches, 1 touchdown to boot, a 17.2 average per catch. Looked absolutely amazing. Also, Cedric Tillman had 6 catches for 59 yards. And man, the Vols they look great against South Carolina. They should have looked great, and they did. They went in there, they did their job. All of their stars looked good. They had a very solid game. Their defense only allowed 20 points throughout the entire game. Brandon Turnage led the way with 14 tackles on the day. They had 4 sacks as a team and 10 tackles for losses. So that defense looked good on the day. And man, they just looked tremendous. Also, man, they had an interception from Jalen McCullough. He did good. He got that interception, helped get a little bit of momentum. And they looked absolutely tremendous as a ball club. And you got to think that momentum is on their side. And there's actually a lot of people, a lot of experts out there, a lot of other football commentators that believe they have the advantage coming into this game against Ole Miss, which is pretty surprising considering that Tennessee currently is not ranked. But, I mean, hey, we've seen some crazy stuff happen in college football. I mean, we just talked about it before we went on the air. Alabama lost this past week, and they were undefeated since 2019. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in college football at the moment. Tennessee's got a lot of momentum. Can it get them to a win? We'll see. We will see. But let's talk about the Ole Miss Rebels. What did they do last week? Well, they had a great game themselves against the Arkansas Razorbacks in an absolute shootout. They won 52-51. So they barely got by. But my lord, anytime you put up over 100 points combined between two teams, that's how you know it's already a classic game, man. Because, man, if you're a defensive coordinator, you might want to, look away from this game, not go back, look at the footage. You might hurt yourself. But, man, if you love offense, that was the game to watch right there. Man, absolutely amazing win. Ole Miss was ranked 17th. Arkansas was 13, so they swapped there. And, man, I knew it was going to be a good game, but I didn't expect it to be that great. Matt Corral, the quarterback, 14 of 21 passing, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, had a great day. But the running game for Ole Miss is what really got that game going for them. 324 rushing yards as a team. Henry Parrish had 18 carries for 111. Snoop Connor had 12 for 110, and then quarterback Matt Corral 15 carries, 94 yards with 2 touchdowns on the ground. Connor had 3 touchdowns. So man, anytime you score 7 touchdowns, oh man, it's hard to put up 50 points, but when you run for 300 plus yards as a team, you have your quarterback doing good and not throwing in interceptions. Hey, you're bound to put up a lot of points, and that's exactly what Ole Miss did. And as for the receiving core, it was kind of crazy. I was looking over the stats, and there's a bunch of receivers that only had 2 catches, and that was about it. There's about 4 or 5 different guys who had 2 catches, and that was the leaders for the team. So it's just hard to think that when they put up 52 points, and I get there running the ball a lot, but man, you think someone will get a little bit more love on the receiving core, but hey, they did a great job. They did their thing. Braylon Sanders and Ontario Drummond each had a touchdown on the day. Sanders had 127 yards on two catches, so you can tell he put up a lot of good work. And the defense, there was a defense on the field. There wasn't a whole lot of it being played very well, but nonetheless, Ole Miss did get the win. Otis Reese led the way with 11 tackles. They had 1 sack on the day and 5 tackles for loss. Keidron Smith had an interception on the day. And, man, it's crazy to think these two teams put up over 100 points. I still can't get over that. But nonetheless, that's why I think that people are thinking that Tennessee might get the win in this one, because they beat South Carolina, a team they were supposed to beat by a good amount. Ole Miss, they did shock people. They were ranked a little bit lower than Arkansas, but they did win by just 1 point in the end. So that is into some consideration, I'm sure, with a lot of people who were watching this game. And man, between these two, they're going to be in Tennessee. So they got the home crowd behind them at Neyland. But man, it's going to be a tough one. I want this one to be I don't want them to score over 100 points. I don't want that now. I want to get a little bit of defense played in this matchup, because there are some good guys on both teams that can do some good work. But if I had to go with a final prediction, a final score for this one, I think I will go with Ole Miss getting the win in this one. But I think they're going to win a little bit. Like I said, I want to be a little bit lower scoring. Both these teams put up a tremendous amount of offense, though. There's no doubt about that. I think I'll go with Ole Miss 35 and Tennessee 28. So just a 1 touchdown, margin right there. It could go either way, but I'm going to give it over the Ole Miss just a little bit more, because, man, how could you not, after see how many points they put up on the board last week? You got to hope the defense is ready to play, though. And as we saw last week, as I talked to you about, Tennessee has a really good defense. So we'll see what happens there. But I got Ole Miss winning 35-28 in the final score.
Well, I definitely like that, and I'm happy to have you edging out Ole Miss in the game to give my Tennessee Volunteers something to fight for, something to go hard on. And when Ole Miss comes into that stadium and there's 102,455 people cheering and screaming at the top of their lungs in Neyland Stadium on that night, I just can't wait to see what happens personally, because that's what it's all about, is getting together, having a great time, watching some college football, and I want to see my Vols come in as slight underdogs, and I want to see them go hard in the first half. I want to see them come back out of the locker room for the second half and just completely come onto the field with 2 more huge quarters of play inside them. So I want to see this. I like the final score. I like that final score, and I like the idea of what could happen in this game. So if you guys are watching right now, tell us, what do you think? Do you think that the Vols will pull out a squeaker in this one, or do you think the Ole Miss Rebels will continue to have these high-scoring, dominant games like this? Let us know in the comments. And if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, thank you so much. All of your shares and telling all your friends and family about our show, especially through word of mouth, just telling your uncle, telling your brother, telling your mom and dad, telling your kids all about 100 yards of football is really, really helping to grow so quickly this entire year. And if you're listening to our podcast, thank you again. But if you're not listening to our podcast right now, please join us over on our podcast channel. Look up 100 Yards of Football anywhere that you listen to podcasts, including on Spotify, including on Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. I like to take my my phone and pull up my Spotify app and then just type 100 yards. And since I've already looked it up before, it pops up immediately. But just look for our green 50-yard line football. And then we're sponsored by the Believe Podcast Network, and you'll see that information there. And we're going to be there for you. We put out new podcasts pretty much every day. You can listen to us on your way to work. You can listen to us while you're at your office, or if you work from home, and you can listen to us on your drive back home. Or if you work in a job where you're in your car a lot, or you're in your 18-wheeler, then you can listen to us while you're going around the country or going around the city, doing all that great work that helps your community so much. And we're so thankful to have all you guys out there doing those jobs. So yeah, listen to us anytime. We don't just do game previews. We also have amazing interviews with legendary players. We have breakdowns of classic games, and we just have great fun where we keep it on the field and we keep it about facts, and we just keep on rolling and talking about this great game of football. Well, for the entire team here, I am Jeremiah Long, the producer, and you've been listening to our host, Logan Landers, give the breakdown of the Tennessee Volunteers versus the Ole Miss Rebels, and we're going to be right back with another live video.